Welcome to the Homeschool Show from North Carolinians for Home Education. I'm Amanda Wares, your host for today, and I have with me Matthew McDill. Hey, Matthew.
Hello, Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great.
It is cold and rainy outside, but it's good in here.
It's yucky.
I know. I think, every year I always say February is my time of the just bleh. The homeschool slump, and it is no different this year.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it delivered.
Okay.
It delivered.
It sure did. And I am done with winter now. I'm ready to move on to spring.
For sure.
Let's just move on already. All right. So what do we have today?
Well, we do have a interview that you had with Jennifer Smith. She is our somewhat new marketing director, but she's been on the team for a little while. So it'll be great to hear her story and find out how she got on the board.
Absolutely.
And then I guess we will talk a little more about one of the topics she brought up, which is finding your homeschool approach. And so she has an interesting story about that, and we'll discuss the challenges of that. And then we have quite a bit of homeschool news, some really exciting things going on.
Definitely. There's a lot going on right now. So that's super great. Well, let's check out this interview.
All right.
Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Good. I'm excited to be here today.
Yes, me too. So I am here today, everybody, with Jennifer Smith. She is marketing director with NCHE, North Carolinians for Home Education. And I'm so excited to get to talk to her and have her share kind of some of her story. And it's going to be great. So first off, I love talking to second generation homeschoolers, which you are. Yes. So would you tell everybody kind of how you got started even being homeschooled and what that was like?
Yes, I have a fun story, and it's very much God's hand that I am the marketing director for NCHE, because when you hear the kind of journey that I've gone on, it just fits so well to who and what we are. So it started with my mom when we moved to North Carolina in, I guess, 1990. And so way back in that ancient times for those young viewers. And and she had put me in, I'd been in public school the whole time. I was in 8th grade, and it was about January, so we were about halfway through the school year. We had lived in Florida prior, and at the time Florida was a much more aggressive academic area of the country as opposed to North Carolina. And I was really advanced for what was going on. So she went to the principal, and she's, kind of pretty much advocated, like we hear all the time now in this day and age. But back then, this was not really the thing that a lot of parents would do, in saying, what are we going to do about my daughter's education? She needs to be in a sophomore class in high school in the way you guys are doing. I don't have really other options here. Can we possibly advance her in other classes? Is there, advanced placement? What can we do? Unfortunately, the principal at the time was not very open to that idea, wasn't willing to work with her on it, probably for the fact that we were not, some of the local longtime people here in the county at the time. And so she started looking for alternatives. Now, homeschooling back then had only been legal in North Carolina for a short amount of time. And private schools were about non-existent for us in the area rurally where we live, which were about 45 minutes outside of Charlotte and Stanley County. And so at the time, literally it would have been over an hour and a half drive one way to get to a private school that she would have maybe even considered. And it just financially was also not something that was really looking like we could do. So sound familiar to parents' decisions today, in that both those things didn't work out. And then lo and behold, she found something about this whole, we can homeschool legally now. Now, at the time when I've talked to my mom, and hopefully at some point, I'd love to see if we could get her on camera to share her bit of it. But she doesn't even remember NCHE, which I love. She doesn't remember that, that was the driving force of what she was getting for information, but we know that it was because NCHE was the people back then that were doing the work to help make homeschooling to what we have today. And so,
Right.
she found great information, sound familiar? And she was like, okay, like, what do I need to do? And so she, registered her school, went through the process, and we became a legal homeschool back then. And so from that point forward, our personal lives kind of made a shift, and they started traveling the country doing arts and crafts shows that were really popular at the time. And they're very talented. They've done that stuff their whole lives. And so I had this really experiential, after being in the classroom for up until 8th grade and just doing the typical, thing, I now was like traveling 40 weeks of the year and learning as I go along. So it was just so eye-opening for me, and truly, like, some of the best testimony I think I have is just what an education can change so drastically, and then what it can do, because that catapulted me into everything else I've done since. So yeah, so I'm really glad my mom was brave to figure out how she could do something different for her daughter. And what's really amazing is that also a lot of people don't know this about my story, but I am the first one of all my generations on my mom and dad's side to graduate from college with a 4-year degree. And I graduated with honors.
How
So just to
neat
kind
is
of,
that?
to really encourage parents. So I've got that to share and say, you can. My mom, high school diploma barely, and, just looking out for her daughter and wanting her to, just have a great opportunity. And so she did the brave thing. And I still think parents every day when they choose homeschooling are doing the same thing that she did.
That's so awesome. What a neat story. I love it. So as you, went to college, graduated, which I think that's an awesome part of your story too, got married, started having kids. And so then did the fact that your homeschool experience, did that sort of influence you to think about homeschooling your own kids, or what was that like?
It's interesting that being second generation, a lot of people say, well, you homeschool, so that's what you were going to do. But remember, again, I'd only done it for my high school years. So actually, I was really intimidated, because the thought of taking my children from being, from right out of the womb, starting right away. But it was a call from God. It was God, literally. I know from the beginning that he just really compelled me to want to homeschool my kids. And so there's nothing where I can say but that it truly was. But in the practicality of it, though, it's been quite a journey of what that looked like. So I think that there was those things that you're saying about the road school thing that I experienced a lot of, that I wasn't giving that experience to my kids. We had a different living thing, and I had well-meaning family and friends, a lot of professors and teachers and people that we knew that were within the system. And so ironically, I actually started being much more of doing school at home. We've talked, and I'm sure you've heard stories of people where they kind of would start there. And so, we had our little classroom, and I remember my oldest son, Michael, I had his little desk all done up and everything, and we'd have a little bulletin board, and there's nothing wrong with that. For some students, for some kids, that can be a great environment even at home. But in that, for my family, that didn't work out so well. They were just a different types of personalities on my children. And so, especially as my girls came along, and I have 3 kids, I don't think we brought that up yet. So I have 3 children. And they're about 2.5 years apart, each of them. So pretty close together. So very quickly, I went from a brand new mom to having a schoolroom full of kids, because I had these 3 children very close together. So there was a lot of that overlapping where, you want to just kind of school everybody kind of the same, if you will. And besides some of the math and language arts things like the history and music or whatever we were doing at the time, science and stuff like that, it was all done together. In that, though, that kind of, when I was using the more traditional, curriculum and information and doing it more schoolroom wise, it just didn't seem to flow. And then I got really sick. I deal with some chronic illness things. And so there was a whole lot happened out of my youngest daughter's birth that kind of traced me. And several years after that, I started going into a real health crisis. And it turned into me homeschooling basically from a recliner for months at a time. And so many people coming to me saying, just put them back in school. It'll be okay. Why don't you put them back in school? Nobody's going to think lesser of you. But again, going back to that why, knowing that God called me to homeschool my kids, and that lo and behold, I'd be here with NCHE. He knew all these things years later. And it really took a turn when I just remember how miserable the girls were one day. And I think I've written on this, I know, as well, in that they just didn't have joy in our days. I mean, it just seemed like such a chore to get up and try to do school. And I'd had it. I was like, and I was doing a little better at the time, health wise. And so I just like, we're not doing any of it. And we got a blanket and we went outside, and they were still, young enough at the time, especially my youngest one. And so I just like, I don't know, go gather leaves and go find what's that bird over there. And we just kind of started like, just observing and just like having a little fun outside. And, it's like, what color is the sky? And like, just intuitively as a mom, and all moms can relate to this. There's just those times where you connect with your children. And I don't even remember what I told them. I think I brought a storybook out and we read, trying to think back all these years now. But it was just trying to get out of the monotonous of, kind of the structure of what we'd done. And of course, then my daughters were like, this was the best school day ever. Can we do this every day? And just like a light bulb went off. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh. And so I went to the internet and I started looking up methods of teaching. I'm like, okay, if this worked, there's got to be something to this. And at the time, I had no moms around me to kind of really mentor me in anything. And I stumbled upon this whole Charlotte Mason style of teaching, which today is becoming very popular. A lot of people are much more aware of it. But it's a whole lot of nature study and literature-based, reading stories, and sound familiar? A lot like what I intuitively did. But I just didn't know that I was like, there was a whole method behind it. And once I locked those two things together, our homeschool journey has been different ever since. That's what worked for us. There's a lot of different methods out there, but that one was, and that proves that sometimes we don't look at a classroom. I think, that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that we can customize for our children, what they need. It's something that I think one of my favorite things is when I get that question, well, what curriculum do I use? I get that often. And I'm like, oh, that's a loaded question. They kind of look at me and I'm like, no, it's not just a list of what you can use. And that's because I'm like, well, why so it's a deeper thing of like, why are you doing this? What are your foundations? What are your children like? What are you like? But I think what I would love people to take from me sharing my story is just trying something else. Try something new. If it's not, even if you've been homeschooling a long time and it's getting there, just try something else. That is a beauty of what we have in homeschooling.
Well, what a great example of having the freedom to make it work for you, make it work for your kids, and in different seasons. That if you change to something, like exactly what you said, Charlotte Mason, that following that style was wonderful for all of you for a season. And then seasons have changed. And so some things have changed. And I think that's just a perfect example of what homeschooling is. It's the freedom to make it work for our family. Okay. So then as your journey was going on, you came to NCHE. And I don't remember how many years it's been, but you can tell us, how did that happen? That you came to NCHE, and then that's been a journey as well, that you've now are on a different role than what you started with. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, it goes back to how I got into homeschooling, obviously with my mom and everything. So when it came back to realizing as my own adult, I started looking for information. How do you homeschool in North Carolina? I guess I'm going to try this with my kids. I feel like to do this. And I have no idea how to. And guess who I found? NCHE. So it really just started with me having to learn what was happening now. And NCHE was the best resource for me. And so I became a member. And then obviously reading, then finally into some things, realizing the history. Then I made the connection back to what my mom was. It's funny how at the time we didn't realize it, but coming forward.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, I mean, that endeared me a little bit more, I think, to NCHE as a second generation, because I'm like, wow, like this is the group that really like changed the path of my life and what now I'm venturing into with my own kids. But I think what really got was that we got to a point where I was like, I have to go to conference. I have to go do this. I met some of you all there and literally walked into the regional gathering that we had, and there was no one for our region. And I'm like, there's nobody doing this for Stanley County?
Oh no.
I'm looking to connect with people. And at the time, there was a vacancy. And wouldn't God have it that I ended up, through process of things months later, I end up becoming the regional. So the couple of years in doing the regional work, and then the opportunity to become a director opened up. And our incredible Matthew McDill, which we absolutely love, came to me and he says, well, like we were kind of talking about like everybody and like what our places are. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but I'll remember clearly what I told him was that, but I know my heart is to help carry the vision of NCHE and helping people to understand what it is to homeschool with confidence and joy, to get out there and equip them and connect them and do all the things that our mission and vision are. But like literally that was coming out of my mouth. And then I realized, and he did, you're the marketing director. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the person that has to let the world know about NCHE. And so here I am. I'm excited to be able to sow to this organization and just share what NCHE is so important to my story. I don't know what would be better than to be able to keep sharing it with everybody else in North Carolina. So, yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. I love that. And I feel like so many of us, that's why we're here. You know, we love NCHE was so instrumental in our own homeschooling journey. And this is just our way of giving back, passing it on, I guess, to the next generation.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. This was awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amanda. It was a thrill.
I love to hear from second generation homeschoolers. I think it's so neat when, now we're getting to the time, a lot of those kids that were homeschooled in the 80s and 90s are now homeschooling their own kids. And it's I love that. It's such a neat thing.
And so it's something that it's interesting just because I can't relate to it, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who weren't homeschooled. So it's a unique dynamic, of course, but it is increasing quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So that's a really interesting part of Jennifer's story. And we also, another little tidbit that was in there that will throw back to an episode that Melanie and I did a little while ago. We talked about road schooling and the idea of homeschooling wherever you are. And Jennifer had that experience too. So that's really a neat part of that story. If you watchers and listeners out there, if you missed the episode about road schooling, go back and look for it. It was really a good one. Super interesting too.
That's right.
And then the thing that I just love about this interview and Jennifer's story as well is how she kind of went through what I think all of us go through as new homeschoolers and then just going on with our homeschool journey, that we have to find what approach works for us and what works for our kids and kind of that process. So I know that when I started, I'm sure this was true for you guys as well, Matthew, that, you go into homeschooling and you don't really even know that there are different approaches to homeschool, right?
Right.
Did you guys, so I know that you and Dana came to the conference before you even started homeschooling, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the year right before.
Yeah.
And finding curriculum was, as as very common, kind of our main goal, right? And that was back when My Father's World was still at the conference. And that's the
Yes.
one we chose. And David Hazel led a vendor workshop. And so I went to some of the vendor workshops, and he convinced me that it was the perfect balance and synchronization of all methods. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know.
Yes.
And it's great. You know, it really is. And then over time, as is inevitable, you do different things. I mean, we used it for a long time, and then we used a lot of different things over the years.
Yeah.
But the conference was super helpful to learn the different approaches and how the different curriculums may line up with that, or even put some of those together.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such an important point and an encouragement to all of you that if you are new to homeschooling, or if you're even not new to homeschooling, but maybe you want to look for something different, you feel like what you're doing isn't fitting your needs or your family's needs, your kids' needs, coming to Thrive is an awesome way to explore those different approaches, what curriculum, what different resources might fit those different approaches, and just help you kind of narrow all that down and find the right fit. I love that. Another thing that Jennifer has experienced that I think is so applicable to many of us, many of our families, is as time went on, she started off very like school at home. We have the desk and the blackboard and the bulletin boards and all the things. I think a lot of us maybe have that experience. And then she found the Charlotte Mason method, and that was such a beautiful part of their homeschool journey. And then as circumstances have changed, as her kids have gotten older, some of their life circumstances have changed a little bit. She's kind of shifted more to fit their needs. And I think that's just the perfect example of how flexible homeschooling is and can be for our families, for our kids.
And one of the points she made that we've often talked about is the fact that our kids are so different.
Yes.
They have such different needs and interests and learning styles, etc. I don't know if we said this before. You can tell me if this goes too far, but if you're going to customize your education to your kids, I don't know how you're going to keep it the same. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to change. Like there's this idea that, well, you're going to pick your curriculum and that's what you're going to do. No, you're not.
Right.
It's just
no,
you're going to have to make adjustments because of the circumstances of your family and the needs of your kids, depending on what's going on.
Absolutely the truth. I don't think that's going too far at all. I think if you asked 100 different homeschool families that have been, are experienced homeschoolers, I think almost all of them would say they are not using maybe what they started off with, or they've changed it up, how they use it. I think most all of us would say we've kind of come to that point where we pick and choose from different resources, depending on, like what you said, the needs of our kids, the different learning styles and all of that. So I think that's absolutely the truth.
And I think that's an encouragement because probably inexperienced people will feel like they failed somehow. So we might as well just go ahead and say, definitely not. Sticking with something isn't a success.
Right.
Modifying for your kids is a success, and you will have to change. So don't even have that expectation.
Right. Exactly. I love that so much. That is fantastic. Such good encouragement, such good information. And for all of you out there, there are a lot, if you go back in the archives of the Homeschool Show, there have been a lot of different episodes that talked about the different approaches. I know in Homeschool Helps with Amanda, I did a series of deep dives into all the different approaches. So you can go back, and if you're interested, if you're brand new, you're thinking, what? There are different approaches to homeschooling. What does that even mean? And so I encourage you, you can find all of that. You can find information on NCHE's website. most of that would be under helps, the helps tab.
Right.
And there's definitely articles, blog posts that we have done, webinars, all kinds of information out there for you that you can find out exactly what those different approaches are, what that even looks like, and some resources that line up with those approaches. So there definitely is more information out there, more than we have time to dive into in this episode, but there's a lot that we have talked about that's on the website. So just.
And I particularly remember the Getting Started webinar, because that's one of the places that you guys really reviewed some of the different approaches. So if you do want to see something where people are talking through it, that's also one of the good options, which you can find under helps and then webinars.
Yeah, that's a great resource for sure. All right. So I think we're moving on to all of the news that we have going on. There is a lot coming up. So it's going to be a busy spring with NCHE. First off, we have, and I'm super excited about this. I always get excited about all of these opportunities, but this one I think is great. Maybe because I have a teenager and I'm excited for him to experience this. We have the Salt and Light Civics seminars coming up, which is a great opportunity for your high schoolers to learn more about government and all of the things that go into civics. These are going to be in Raleigh. They're sponsored by the North Carolina Family Policy Council, and they are free. It is happening March. We have 2 dates. So if one doesn't work for you, maybe the other one will. March 18th or the 26th. So you can find more information about that on our website, nche.com, under activities. And then we're going to Biltmore. This is so fun also. So Biltmore Estate, as you know, is super expensive to go to. And they do have homeschool days from time to time, but our group, we have some special opportunities. We have access to more things than you would at just a regular homeschool day. This is a great opportunity. Yeah, really. It's really good. So you, again, find that under activities. That's coming up April the 21st. But you definitely want to go ahead and register, because I think that the availability is limited, as with all the things, there's only so much space. Then coming up, another thing that is free and really good. There's an online chess workshop. And I have talked to several people that did this, that participated in it, that thought it was wonderful. Whether you're a kid, this is not just for kids. If you're an adult and you're interested in chess, you want to find out more about it, this is a great beginner chess workshop. You just sign up. It's online. Fabulous. I also wanted to mention for all of you chess enthusiasts out there that we do have a chess tournament at Thrive. On the Thursday of the conference, the opening day of the conference, there is a chess tournament. And this is a great opportunity for any of your young chess enthusiasts out there. So there's beginner, intermediate, different levels of experience and different age groups. And there are prizes. It's just it's a neat opportunity. So I encourage you to sign up for that as well.
Yeah, I've had several of my boys have participated in that, really enjoyed kicking off the conference with something a little more active, engaged, doing something fun, won some awards and all that. So they've really enjoyed that. And I know back to that workshop, Stephen Bloom, who is the one who leads the workshop, who is, one of the best players in Canada, has his own courses for that. And if you become a member of NCHE, you get special discounts to those courses. So that's another benefit of checking out the workshop, because then you can find out more about that.
That is great. Yes, that's so neat. I love it. My kids over the years, I never learned how to play chess growing up, but once I had my kids and we were homeschooling, we learned how to play chess. as a part of our schooling. And some of my kids really just loved it.
Yeah.
And very quickly became a better player than mom, and they could beat me easily. But I just think it's really great. A lot of different critical thinking things that go into that.
Mm-hmm.
So next we have a careers in the arts field trip, and I have a ballet dancer. As my oldest daughter was a ballet dancer, she would have loved this field trip. This is so great. So this is a little different than just going to, a ballet performance or an art performance. This is a great opportunity to explore all the different careers that there are in the arts. So, you don't necessarily have to be a ballet dancer to work in the ballet world, or to be an actor to work in the theater. And this just is a great way to explore all of that. And there will be some performances that the attendees can watch as well. So that sounds like a great opportunity. It's coming up March the 7th. Check that out as well. Okay. We also have another new date for Sleepin' with the Fishes. So our first date of visiting and spending the night at the Fort Fisher Aquarium completely sold out and filled up. So we have a new date that is coming up March 8th and 9th, and it is filling up fast. So if you want to get in on that, you need to go ahead and sign up. But that's a great opportunity. Again, go visit the aquarium, spend the night in front of the tanks. I think that sounds so fun. Last but not least is I've been seeing a lot of questions coming up about Capital Fest. Is Capital Fest happening this year? What are the plans for it and all of that? So I just wanted to let you all know that Capital Fest is happening this year. Plans are in the works. We are finalizing a few things. And as soon as those details get finalized, all that information will be out there available to you. We're thinking it's going to be coming up in April. So just keep that in your mind and be on the lookout for those details.
That's right. I know Spencer's working really hard to make sure we get our location set. And then, of course, we'll be able to get all the kind of a field trip in the field trip, these little tours you can sign up for. It's a really great way of getting your kids not only familiar with North Carolina government, but then also being able to participate and actually represent homeschoolers in Raleigh.
Yes. So important, and such a wonderful opportunity. We've participated in Capital Fest a few times, and it was just great. So be on the lookout for that. I think that is all of our news for today. That was a lot. There's a lot coming up. So be sure to check out the website under activities to get all that information. Sign up for our weekly email if you don't already get it. And as always, make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast, to the show on YouTube, so that you will be the first to know with all the news, all the things that are happening. Well, as always, guys, keep homeschooling with confidence and joy. We'll see you next time.
Have a great week.